Well, hey everybody, I'm Sam. I'm a pastor. I am a student of the Bible. I'm a Bible teacher. I have degrees in both Bible and theology. And if you want to read any of my writings, you can go to sambrick.org, kind of click the thing that says posts and scroll down from there. You can read all of that. I got a question today in church that I wanted to kind of talk about here. And it's kind of a random question. I was in the lobby of our church and one of our church members came up and was like, hey, I've got a question for you. Me and my friend are reading through Genesis and we got to Genesis chapter 14. And she said, my Bible said something different than hers. Now, my guess is that the actual text didn't say something different, but the study note or the footnote may have said something different. And so she brought it up and it was Genesis 14, verse 18. She said, look, it says here, Melchizedek, king of Salem. And she said in her study Bible, it said king of Sodom. So which is it? And so I told her, I said, well, here's the deal. That is a little bit of a debated thing amongst critical scholarship. In the tradition, it's like no brainer. It's this. But there lately have been some books, some other things that have been written to question that translation there and to question what happened there. So let's talk about it. All right. So the tradition of Melchizedek, king of Salem, it comes from Genesis 14. We see that Abram is going to go rescue Lot. These four kings are going out to battle. The king of Sodom is one of those. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, in verse 18, this guy Melchizedek shows up. And he has said that he is, look at the verse here, it says, then Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought out bread and wine. He was a priest of God Most High. And then the rest of the passage goes on to say that Abram gave him a tenth of everything that he had. Then the king of Sodom starts talking to him. And so it's this weird interchange that it feels like this king of Salem, Melchizedek, pops out of nowhere, does this thing, and then goes back into obscurity. In the passage. And I want to look at, when we get to the critical scholarship side of this argument of maybe this isn't a king of Salem, maybe that's a scribe kind of erasing that out and adding in Salem versus Sodom. Maybe it should have been king of Sodom. When we get to that, I'll walk through the passage. I'll show you kind of why I think that could be a really possible thing that happened here. But the traditional view, the traditional way of looking at this is that Melchizedek was a king of Salem, and the author of Genesis is trying to contrast the king of Sodom here with the king of Salem. And the reason that the tradition is this is because we see in, or we know that the tradition is this, is because we see in apocryphal writings, there's a lot written about Melchizedek, and he's viewed as this spiritual forerunner. This person who's like a priest of the Most High God, not a priest in the line of Aaron, but even bigger than that, more important than that. And then you get to the New Testament, and then Hebrews writes about Melchizedek and says that Jesus is a high priest in the order of Melchizedek, meaning that he doesn't have to be, lineage to Aaron to be a high priest, but he's a priest in order of Melchizedek, which has no beginning, has no end. It's this kind of high priestliness. And that's this. So the New Testament kind of looks at Melchizedek as this very special person, right? But that's a interpretation of what's going on there. And so there's this traditional thing that this is who Melchizedek is. Lately, though, there's been some pushback against that. There's been some relooking at the passage and saying, wait a second, maybe that isn't really a thing. Maybe Melchizedek was actually the king of Sodom here. We're going to read through the passage. I want to show you kind of how that thinking comes about and why that thinking comes about. But one of the people to challenge this idea of the king of Salem versus the king of Sodom is a Bible scholar named Robert Cargill. He has a YouTube channel where he talks about archaeology and that kind of stuff. But he's a professor at Iowa University and University of Iowa, and he wrote this book back in 2019 called Melchizedek's King of Sodom: How Scribes Invented the Biblical Priest King. And his argument is that the scribes went back in and changed because of the story of Sodom and God destroying Sodom later, just a little bit later, that the scribes went in and changed Melchizedek, because Melchizedek is such a well-known character to them, and it's like this. He's this larger-than-life character that his argument is they went in and they changed King of Sodom to King of Salem, but it really should say King of Sodom. So, and that he was morphed into this, priest king person that, maybe he was just a king, but he was a priest of El, who was the high god in the pantheon of the Canaanites. And so that he's like arguing for that. So some people have asked, well, how in the world do you get there? Well, let me show you how you get there, okay? When you get to Genesis chapter 14, you get to verse 8, and this is what it says. It says, then the king of Sodom, the king of Gomorrah, the king of Admah, and the king of Zeboim, and the king of Bela, these 5 kings, that is Zoar, marched out and drew up their battle lines in the valley of Siddim against Kedorlaomer, king of Elam, Tidal, king of Goyim, Imraphel, king of Shinar, and Arioch, king of Elasar. 4 kings against 5. Now the valley of Siddim was full of tar pits, and when the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah fled, some of the men fell into them, and the rest fled to the hills. The 4 kings seized all the goods of Sodom and Gomorrah and all their food, and then they went away. They also carried off Abram's nephew Lot and his possessions, since he was living in Sodom. Okay, so I think we're kind of familiar with that. So you have all of this going on. Sodom is mentioned here. Gomorrah is mentioned here. A bunch of other places mentioned here. Verse 13, a man who had escaped came and reported this to Abram, the Hebrew. Now Abram was living near the great trees of Mamre in the Amorite, Mamre the Amorite, a brother of Eshcol and Aner, all of whom were allied with Abram. When Abram heard that his relative had been taken captive, he called out the 318 trained men born in his household and went in pursuit as far as Dan. During the night, Abram divided his men to attack them, and he routed them, pursuing them as far as Hobah, north of Damascus. He recovered all the goods and brought back his relative Lot and his possessions, together with all the women and all the other people. After Abram returned from defeating Kedorlaomer and the kings allied with him, the king of Sodom came out to meet him in the valley of Shavah, that is, the king's valley. Then Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought out bread and wine. He was priest of God Most High, and he blessed Abram, saying, blessed be Abram by God Most High, creator of heaven and earth, and praise be to God Most High, who delivered your enemies into your hand. Then Abram gave him a tenth of everything. The king of Sodom said to Abram, give me the people and keep the goods for yourself. But Abram said to the king of Sodom, with raised hand I have sworn an oath to the Lord, God Most High, creator of heaven and earth, that I will accept nothing belonging to you, not even a thread or the strap of a sandal, so that you will never be able to say, I made Abram rich. I will accept nothing but what my men have eaten, and the share that belongs to the men who went with me to Aner, Eshcol, and Mamre. Let them have their share. End of chapter. It sure, as you read the chapter and you read the interactions, it sure seems like King of Salem doesn't belong anywhere in this passage whatsoever. Like, what's Salem? Where's Salem? Who's this person? Who is this Melchizedek? Where is he from? He's talking to the king of Sodom. The king of Sodom is very appreciative of what Abram has done, his men have done, defeating these people who have attacked them, and they're all running away. And the king of Sodom comes to meet Abram, and then all of a sudden Melchizedek, the king of Salem, starts speaking and doing all this stuff. And then it says the king of Sodom said to him, give me the people, keep the goods for yourself. Meaning, wait a second, who did Abram give the tenth of everything to? Was it the king of Salem or the king of Sodom? And so that's how you can kind of see that something's going on here. Something very weird is going on here in this passage. And a lot of people scratch their heads when they read this and they go, but because of the tradition, because of what has happened from the New Testament perspective, because of what happened in the apocryphal writings and the pseudepigraphical writings, all of these things that are out there, this tradition has kind of carried forward. And then Melchizedek was this king of Salem, and he was a priest of the Most High God. And the Most High God here refers to a name of Yahweh, name of God, that, he hasn't said my name is Yahweh yet, but it's God. Versus maybe what's going on here is that the author of Genesis, or the authors of Genesis, are trying to clue us into the fact that this was the king of Sodom, and he was also a priest of El, which was the Canaanite pantheon god, and that he was out to offer these offerings to Abram, saying thank you, and then Abram paid him a tenth for all of what they did, keeping his nephew safe and all this kind of stuff. So it's very fascinating. These are the two different sides of this argument. I'm more leaning towards, the tradition because of all of the traditional writings of what has happened. But I do find it fascinating and interesting that it seems when you read through the passage that either Melchizedek comes out of nowhere, like absolutely nowhere, or maybe this was kind of an error, or maybe a scribe went back in and said, no, we have to have Salem, we can't have Sodom. Either way, this king of Salem, king of Sodom, who is a priest of the Most High God, he comes out and he blesses Abram, and then the story kind of just grows from there. And then we get to Hebrews, and then Jesus is a priest in the order of Melchizedek, because it has no beginning, it has no end. And it's not of the Levite or Aaronic line, and so Jesus is that kind of a high priest, and it's a metaphor. It's not exactly like, no, Jesus is just like this, or so as some people want to posit, like, well, Jesus was this was a Christophany or a theophany in the Bible, and this was Melchizedek, king of Salem or Sodom. All right, hopefully that piqued your interest. I would love to hear your comments or read your comments in the comment section. Like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.